Hello and welcome to the alternate point of view. Long time no see, y'all. Yes, it has been a hot minute. So life happens. I've been super busy. I'm sure y'all been super busy watching other channels. But welcome. Y'all don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and share. I'm so happy to see y'all, and I hope y'all are happy to see me. I know it's been a hot minute, but we're here. I don't want to go into the long story of explaining of where the hell I have been because I'm sure y'all don't care. So let's get into this video today. So today, y'all, I am going to react to some juror explanations on the Karen Read verdict. So if y'all are not aware, Karen Read was found not guilty. Finally, after $100 million and 2 trials later, y'all, Karen Read has finally been found not guilty. The answer that we, the public, have all thought all along, right? And we thought this jury would realize, like in the blink of an eye, that they would see that obviously Karen Read was not guilty, that obviously John O'Keefe, his injuries were from a dog bite or dog scratches, right? We just knew that they would see exactly what the public saw. We just knew that they would realize that we, as the public, saw everything that common sense saw, that Karen Read could not have possibly hit John O'Keefe with her 6,000-pound SUV Lexus, right? We knew the answer all along, and we all were on the we can't stand Brennan train, right? The first trial, we couldn't stand Lolly because Lolly had the most monotone accent in the world, and we could not stand listening to him talk and ask questions because it was so very boring. Oh, wait, that's more of an English accent. Anyway, regardless, it was super boring. Okay, and Hank Brennan, who would talk like this, and he would scrunch his face up like this, and he would always do like well, what does 1 + 1 equal? It equals 2. Well, do you have any peer review studies that claim that? Oh, you don't. Is that on your resume, your CV? Well, anyway, that was Hank Brennan. We had to listen to that. But thankfully, y'all, the jury found Karen Read not guilty. And we all realized, right, like I said, that Karen Read couldn't possibly have done this. But let's listen to a juror and their actual perspective, because in our minds, she was framed, right? In the public's eyes, this was a huge conspiracy that the Albert family, the McCabe family, the police department, everyone was in on this. Michael Proctor, the lead detective, that everybody was just in on this together, right? But let's hear what the juror has to say, because I do believe that this will put some things into perspective, because the jurors don't know all the hoopla and all the just craziness that is behind this entire case that we saw on the outside. So I want you to see and hear what this juror had to say. And let's put this into perspective as a juror, because I think this is going to help us understand what they actually heard, which was the actual evidence that was presented to them, not the side piece of the court TV, the law and crime, other YouTubers like myself, Facebook posts, that kind of stuff. This is an actual juror. Let's hear what she has to say.
Just tell us about the verdict and how you guys came to this conclusion.
Yeah, sure. So it was a very intense week. We are at first for me, I thought Karen Read was actually maybe guilty of manslaughter in the beginning, but as the weeks passed by, I just realized there was too many holes that we couldn't fill, and there's nothing that put her on the scene, in our opinion, besides just drop John O'Keefe off. And the taillight, the injuries in his arm didn't make much sense that come from the taillight for us. The last witness, Arca, from the defense, that made clear, they did a very good job, like showing us, explaining all the technicalities, I'm sorry, of everything. And yeah, it was, we couldn't prove there was a collision and she was responsible for John's death.
Are you convinced she wasn't responsible for his death?
I am convinced. I'm 100% convinced. Yes, I really don't think she was responsible for his death. I think she dropped him off. If she back up fast enough to maybe touch him, maybe, but that was not the reason why he fell his back in a way that the way the cut was, the injury was, and the fracture was. I don't think that was from the car, because otherwise we would see much more injuries over his body.
So what do you think happened to him?
It's a theory, like conspiracy theory type of thing, because I think she maybe back up and touch him somehow. Maybe he lost his shoes in this movement and got upset, like, and then she left and she didn't saw him. And so either he got out of her way or something, and maybe he lost his shoes in this process. But he, in my opinion, he definitely went inside and something happened inside the house.
Paula, you were getting emotional. What was going through your heart and mind after making that, tremendous decision?
Okay, so she starts off saying that she thought at first that Karen Reed was guilty of the manslaughter charge, but she was convinced that she wasn't guilty and that there's no way that John O'Keefe was hit by the vehicle. She says that the ARCA experts that the defense put up explained it very well, that there's no way he was hit by the car. But then at the same time, she goes back and says that maybe Karen could have hit him, but she doesn't believe, as she's trying to say, she doesn't believe Karen did it on purpose if she did. And that she also doesn't believe, based on his injuries, that it was caused by him falling back in from being hit by the vehicle, if he was hit by the vehicle. But she also makes a statement that she does believe that John went into that house. So I find that very interesting that she went into this believing that Karen hit him, that Karen had something to do with this. But after hearing all the evidence, she changed her tune and she believed the ARCA experts and seeing that his injuries did not match being hit by a vehicle. So I think that is very telling that she did listen to all the evidence. So unlike us on the outside hearing all of this hoopla, all of these people out there picketing and all of the court TV side notes and other experts weighing in, they did not hear all of that. They literally just heard what was told on the stand.
Decision.
Yeah, so I was happy for Karen Reed and her family. Of course, I think justice was served, but see John O'Keefe's family leaving the courthouse was melt my heart. I'm a mother, and I saw her pain through all those days. And I mean, I just want to tell them it's not our fault that Karen Reed is not convicted, even if there's any chance she's guilty of something, of hurt him somehow. The Commonwealth and the investigators didn't do their jobs to prove that to us. So
you hear that? The Commonwealth and the prosecution and investigators did not do their job to prove this case. She said so. She's a juror. That's what the juror's job is to do, is to look at the evidence presented to them and use that evidence and decide if that is enough. I say this all the time, y'all. I say, it's whatever story you believe the most. And it does the evidence that's given back up that story the best. I mean, it is beyond a reasonable doubt, y'all. That's the prosecution's job. The defense doesn't have to do a dang thing. They don't have to put forth any kind of case. They can sit there and keep their mouth shut and not say a freaking word. It is all up to the prosecution to give the case, put forth evidence beyond a reasonable doubt. And they did not do that. They did not put forth a case beyond a reasonable doubt. And this juror is sitting there telling people that. She's saying that. They didn't prove their case. And they spent tons of money on this. Tons of money. Imagine the people in Massachusetts that are waiting to have justice, that deserve justice up there, that will never see it because of all the money spent on this case.
Couldn't charge her with anything. And I really, really hope there is a way for the case to be reopened and they can investigate again and find who actually did that to John.
But
Was
you
it
were emotional at the end.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Was because I was sad for the family, because I feel like great for Karen Reed, but horrible for the family. He seemed to be a very nice guy, the story with his nephews and niece, and was alive. So I feel bad for them, and I really want them to get justice for John O'Keefe for real.
Was it a poor investigation?
In my opinion, yes. Too many flaws, too many holes that we couldn't fill in. No reports, so many things, videos with glitch. I don't know, felt a little not correct, not precise. I mean, they are police officers; they know what to do in investigation, and with too many pieces were missing.
Well, you said you were first thinking manslaughter in the beginning. What changed your mind to not guilty?
The process, like what as they show us that things don't connect to each other. The injuries don't connect with the tail light, the glitch on the video of the sailport, the missing part of the video of the ring light in John O'Keefe's house was too many coincidences to be, straight her fault.
So the first trial, the jurors were deadlocked. They couldn't come up with a decision. Were you surprised that they brought this case again for a second time? That they prosecuted her for a second time?
No, not surprised, because I have a law background from Brazil. I study law. I worked a little bit as an attorney before I moved here, so I understand a little bit the system. I'm not surprised she was charged again. And that we definitely didn't want to hang this jury. We were very positive that we're going to discuss everything as much as we can, because we don't want to. The amount of money spent on this trial made me very upset, and I'm sure made my fellow jurors upset too.
Do you think she was framed?
Hard to say. I didn't have a chance to look into the investigation outside the courtroom and everything that was said in the last trial. It's less than 24 hours since I started looking into those things. So I can't say she was framed, but maybe, I don't know. I don't know.
Did you find it strange you didn't hear from the lead investigator, Michael Proctor?
No, I didn't find it strange not hear from him, but I found strange not hear from Brian Albert and Brian Higgins, because the owner for the house and the person who exchanged text messages with Karen Reed a few days before John O'Keefe died. So I think was weird not hear from them.
Do you find it weird that the DA hasn't said anything at all about the case or the verdict? I mean, all he said was the jury has spoken, which you guys did, but nothing else.
I was surprised that they wanted the sentence right away. I'm not sure if they're going to appeal, what's going to happen. I didn't have time to see what happened today because I was out with my family. But I don't know, maybe they're just going to give up and reopen the investigation.
At the beginning of deliberations, did some people think she was guilty?
At the beginning of deliberation, I don't know. We decided not to vote, not to say what we really think, and instead go through witnesses and the videos and the paper, the clothes and everything. So I'm not sure what they thought. But when we got an agreement of what charges we would eliminate it one by one, and then we got to the verdict.
Was it hard to focus or, with the pressure of...
So this jury did an excellent job. So here we all were outside chomping at the bit, trying to figure out what the heck is taking them so long to come up with a verdict, right? When they were actually taking the evidence, because they didn't have, like I said, all of this white noise that we had. They didn't have all of this debate and all of this conversation. All they had was what was put before them. So they literally were going through the evidence. And she made a good point. Here we were. One of our main focuses out here was Michael Proctor, right? He was a huge focus, even for the defense. Where is the lead investigator? Where is the guy that put this investigation together and botched it all up? The jurors didn't even care about him. They were wondering, where was the owner of the house? why didn't he testify? And where's this Higgins guy? So they were curious as to where they were. They didn't care about Michael Proctor. So it's odd how the jury, picks and chooses what they wonder and are curious about. And here we are focusing on things that, because we knew about the trial before. And it's also odd that, she does have a background in law. So she didn't think it was weird that this was a retrial. But she's been very honest. This is the second juror that I've seen that spoke out, and she's the same. Another juror also said they did not poll. A lot of juries do that. They poll and see how many guilties, not guilties they have. I've heard that that's bad and good. It just depends on where you're at. But they did not poll and see that. They just actually sat down and decided to start combing through the evidence and look at the charges and see which charges they were going to go through and look at the evidence and match and see which needed to be looked at the most, and dwindle down to the one that they felt were the ones that they agreed upon. So I think they really did a good job looking at the evidence. And they did a good job taking what the prosecution said and what the defense said and understood what their assignment was. They understood the assignment and they did it. And I am very proud and happy that this is how our justice system should work, that they didn't take any influences outside of the courtroom. So I'm really confident and thankful that this is how this worked out. So let's keep listening to what else she has to say.
The big crowds outside every day chanting, like how much pressure was that for you guys?
I didn't see people outside until I think Monday, because the way the bus brings us to the back of the courthouse, only if you look to your right and you see maybe some pink shirts or something, but I didn't know it was that big crowd like yesterday. And we couldn't hear anything. They covered the room so we couldn't see through the window. And through the whole process, I didn't hear anything inside the courtroom. None of us did.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like this wasn't that difficult for you guys to reach consensus here. Was it difficult to reach this decision or not really?
Well, I can speak for myself. For me, it wasn't. For me, I had my opinion formed before we get in there. So some people might thought differently. So we had some discussions, of course, but I can't talk for other people.
But it doesn't sound like it was very heated. And were people fighting, or was it?
Yeah. No, there wasn't fight. We have a respectful group of people. We got along very well, and we listened to each other's opinion. I can't say much what happened inside the deliberation room. It's the judge told us not to talk about it, but of course there were discussions of our opinions and the proofs, and let's look into this, look into that until we got to a consensus. But nothing heated. No.
Did you make much of her the videos that were played of her saying, well, maybe I might have clipped him, her almost admitting that, well, maybe something happened?
Yeah, that's where I take my theory from. Since she woke up thinking, oh, maybe I hit him. So this idea come from somewhere in her mind, right? So maybe when she back up, she hit something, the curb or him or something. I don't know. But definitely his injuries are not consistent with the tail light damage. We do not believe the tail light, the way that was presented in the Sally Port on that day, it's not the same way that we saw in the videos of the car coming out of the meadows in the morning. I don't think the car killed John O'Keefe, no.
At what point in the trial did you start to think she was innocent?
Maybe like 3 weeks ago, after, when they had the police lab bringing DNA, they found a little trace of DNA here and there, but they also found 2 males' DNA here and there. So maybe there was more people involved on that. So that's when I started shifting my mind to completely not guilty of killing him at all. And the OE wine was the only thing we can't deny, because she said on the video she was drinking, and there are videos of her drinking, counting of her drinking. So we couldn't let that pass.
So 3-4 weeks ago. So early in. So when they had the DNA coming in, and they were talking about like he had other DNA on him that they couldn't identify. So that made her realize, and she said earlier in her interview that she thinks he went into that house. He went in there. So the jury believes that something happened and it wasn't Karen. So they sat through that entire trial, even still, you know, thinking maybe something will come out that proves, you know, that that vehicle hit him, but nothing ever did. So they were sitting there listening intently. They listened and they heard every bit of evidence, and they took every bit of evidence back there. So they really did use all of that time that they were deliberating and going through all of the evidence and trying to piece it together. And they did exactly what all of those accident reconstructionists did. They take the evidence and they put it together and they said, does this match this, what happened, what they're saying happened? So if John O'Keefe was hit, does this match him being hit? And she's saying herself, those injuries did not match being hit by a vehicle. So something else had to have happened.
Anything else, Paula? Like, what's your message, or what's the lesson that you learned in this process? Or
Well, my first time being a juror was an incredible experience. Really, I really enjoyed being there. It wasn't a burden at all. The deliberation part for me was a little overwhelmed because of the pressure of have someone's life in your hand. But the crowd outside or influence from outside, none of this came to me. So I was clear in my mind, just focus on her and the case and the evidences we have. But for me, it was a great experience, and I'm happy that I feel good about what we did. I'm confident that she's innocent, and I really, really hope the pressure that they had in this case now is transferred to John O'Keefe family, and justice for him, like new investigation, whatever needs to be done.
So I think that's amazing. I think that that jury did a great job. I think she was very honest. I think it's very sad that the Commonwealth is not going to open this investigation. The Canton Police Department's not going to keep this investigation open. They're never going to know what happened to John O'Keefe. And I think it's sad that the Alberts are now going on some sort of press tour, basically, trying to say that John O'Keefe, and they're still sticking to their story that he never came into their house. Maybe he didn't. I don't know. I really have no idea what happened to that man. And I think it's very, very sad. Maybe he didn't go into his house. Karen Reed says in one of her interviews that, you know, John got out of the car and he said he was going to go in and see what the party looked like. And she said she got on her phone, which is typical because, you know what? I mean, my man does it all the time. I'll be, you know, going to see my friends and he'll be sitting out waiting in the car for me and he won't even look up. And I'll be like, yo, I'm here. I'm ready to go. And he'll be on his phone looking at memes, funny videos or whatever. That's, you know, Karen Reed says she's looking at emails, checking messages, whatever. For all we know, he didn't make it into the house. For all we know, he freaking fell over the curb and hit the dang fire hydrant. Who knows? Who knows? Who knows? But there could be a million different scenarios. But this is the most odd, insane situation. It just could, there could be so many different scenarios that could have happened that night. Maybe he did go in the house. Who knows? Maybe there was a fight. Maybe the dog did bite him. I don't know. We will never, ever, never, never, ever know. Maybe everybody's innocent. Maybe nobody has dirty hands in this, other than this investigation was an entire, complete debacle. And maybe it just, I mean, I don't know. All I do know is that the jury did its job in the way she explained it. And I want to listen to another juror who explained it almost exactly the way she did a very good job explaining how they deliberated. So
I think for the jurors, there's a mix of some people think that she was definitely innocent, and and the other people, there was a lot of reasonable doubt, at least to where we didn't want to convict her.
That's really interesting. So could you give me a breakdown there? Roughly what percentage of the jury felt she was innocent?
I mean, I can only speak for myself. I think that she was innocent. It's hard to tell exactly what people think deep down. There was a lot of things thrown at us, of evidence. So it's hard to tell what truly.
So you say in your head she was innocent. Does that mean you think she was framed by people inside that house?
It doesn't necessarily mean that. I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened to John. Really, I was only presented a limited scope of what happened at the night, and I could only base my opinion off of the evidence that was shown in the courtroom. So I don't really know if there was a cover-up or not. I know that's the big conspiracy around it, but I don't really know. All I know is that there was a lot of holes in the investigation. Whether they were deliberate holes or not deliberate holes, it's kind of hard from me sitting back to know that, what actually happened.
So what was the feeling of the jury? Because Alan Jackson and the other lawyers raised the issue that she was framed by cops and that they would have turned that house upside down if they really wanted to do an honest investigation, and that he was not hit by a car. He was attacked in that house, bitten by a dog, and then put outside to frame her. Did people on the jury, or some of them, buy that argument?
I think some of them bought that argument. It's just hard to tell, though, because whether or not we think that there was malicious intent, we were only presented with the facts that they didn't go into the house. So, there's an example of reasonable doubt. So, there's other examples of reasonable doubt. So even if you want to completely buy into the theory or not, that wasn't what we were tasked with. We were tasked with finding, convicting, or deciding on this person's fate based on the proof and the evidence that the Commonwealth was able to present. And there was a lot of holes in the investigation.
So he said the same thing that Paula said earlier in her interview. There were a lot of holes, and the Commonwealth did not prove their case. So once again, he's saying the same thing. They were presented with certain evidence, and they are going by the evidence. So a lot of people, all the interviewers are doing the same thing. They're asking these jurors, did you think there was a conspiracy? Did you think it was a frame up? Did you think? But the jurors they don't have the same information that we have. They don't have the same story, the same hoopla, and all this kind of shenanigans. They don't understand this whole frame up situation. Even though the defense was putting that into their defense, trying to say that this was a whole conspiracy, the jurors didn't see that. What the jurors are looking at is, was John O'Keefe hit by her Lexus or was he not? Did he go into their house or did he not? Is there evidence? Is there proof of that? That's what they're looking for. That's what they were trying to piece together. That's the puzzle they had. So this juror is saying the exact same thing, that the Commonwealth did not prove beyond a reasonable doubt that she was hit by the Lexus. So that's hard for us to wrap our heads around because we have all this added information. They did not. So I love hearing this perspective. I love seeing this and trying to understand it from their seat, from what their viewpoint was. So this is a different point of view for sure.
Yet you went many steps beyond that because you say, in your view, she was innocent. What compels you to think that?
Well, one thing that I think that compels me is we did a lot of review of the tapes, and it seemed to me that the videos that we could see from the car after the alleged incident happened, that when we could see the taillight, it was lit up red where it shouldn't just have been red. So that leaves to me a conclusion of, well, how come it's red in this video after the alleged collision happened, and then it's not it doesn't have any red pieces where it should be red.
So in other words, you do not believe that SUV made contact with John O'Keefe?
I don't believe that the SUV collided with John O'Keefe.
What was the initial vote with the jury when you first took your vote?
We didn't do an initial straw poll. The judge recommended to us in the courtroom that is not a good way to do it. We broke down, what we did is we broke down each charge, and we went from top to bottom and discussed everything thoroughly, and did our best to do right by the Karen Reed and the Commonwealth.
Was there a division initially?
Yeah, there was a division. But that's what we're there to deliberate and talk about all the evidence. There was 2 months of us sitting there, them throwing all this information at us absorbing the information, going home, thinking about it, reviewing it in our heads, and we finally get to the deliberations, and now we have an opportunity to discuss. Some people went into the deliberations and they were still unsure after two months, and that makes sense because there was a lot of things going on. There's a lot of information. How much can you weigh one thing or another thing over,
Yeah. What about jurors who felt initially she was guilty? Were there any of them?
Yeah, there were a few jurors that think that had thought that initially when they went into the deliberations, that was their standpoint, and that's what we were there to do, to talk through all that and bring up every single piece of evidence. Is there an angle of reasonable doubt to where we're not really sure? Like, are you really sure? Are you 100%, or are you 99.9%? If you're that 99%, we can't convict you.
What brought the ones who felt she was guilty over to the not guilty side? Was there anything in particular that seemed to resonate with them?
It's hard to tell from my position. You'd have to ask them about it. But in my opinion, I think it was just due to the poor investigation. There's just too many holes, and it's hard to prove that the collision happened. So if there's reasonable doubt that happened, or that there may have been foul play, if there's room for that, then it's hard to come to a guilty verdict.
What happened when the jury initially said they had a verdict and then said, oops, no, we don't, and then 15 minutes later they said, oh, we do? What happened there?
So that actually is kind of interesting. So the envelope, it was sealed and it's locked away. It'll never be looked at. But on everything on that initial slip was the same as the slip that was presented.
But why did they pull it back?
The pulling the back was for the OUI charge.
There was driving under the influence, essentially, drunk driving.
Yes, driving under the influence. We in our deliberations, we had decided there was enough evidence and proof that she was driving under the influence. And
So, how did the defense do? How did the lawyers do, in your view? Her lawyers.
For her lawyers specifically, I think they all did. I think that all the lawyers on both sides did a really good job. They presented their case as well.
The police, you say the investigation was poor. The defense said it was more than poor, it was corrupt, and they pointed to the lead detective who had been fired, didn't testify in your trial. Did that have an impact? And did you think it was a corrupt police investigation?
Do I think it was a corrupt police investigation? I don't know. There's no way for me to know. I wasn't there. There was just, there was holes in the case that left for reasonable doubt. I think they could have checked some boxes or done some things differently. But do I know that they were corrupt? Absolutely not. I don't know that there was any corruption going on. But do I know that there wasn't enough proof or evidence secured by the police to convict Karen Reed? Absolutely not. There was not.
Fair to say that your view was that her SUV did not make contact with O'Keefe, therefore she did not kill him, but you don't know how he died.
I would say that's fair to say. I don't know how John O'Keefe died, and I do not believe that there was a collision between the SUV and John O'Keefe.
Jason, really appreciate the time. I do want to ask one other thing. Did all of the hoopla around the case, the people outside, did it give you comfort in reaching a verdict like this, that you saw there was a community behind your point of view, or was it irrelevant?
Honestly, that made the pressure a lot harder, and it did not give me comfort. It made it a lot harder to block out everything and come to a decision.
Why did it make it harder?
It made it harder because all of the eyes are on us. We were told we're the most important people in the courtroom, and they keep us away from the crowds of people in the front of the courthouse, but we do see them, and I don't think that having all those people swayed me to go either way. We were only tasked with looking at the evidence. We were 12 jurors. We had to back up how we felt in this for our decision, and we couldn't let any outside factors, her punishment. We couldn't factor any of that. We had to look at the evidence that was presented to us, absorb it, really understand it, and see if there's any reasonable doubt. And there was.
Jason, thank you so much.
So there you have it. His perspective of the outside influence was a little different than the other juror. He said it was very heavy, but and it weighed on him, but it did not stop him from his verdict. But again, he echoed the exact same sentiment, which is that the Commonwealth, the prosecution, the investigation was bad. Okay, there's no other way to put it. It was bad. It had a lot of holes, and it didn't prove the case. And what it did prove was that Karen Reed was innocent, and they found her not guilty. And I wanted to share that with y'all. I'm sure many of y'all have already seen a lot of the juror reactions. I'm sure you've seen several videos, but I wanted to share this because this is the alternate point of view. And I love this alternate point of view because we have had our point of views about this trial throughout this trial and the retrial. And we've had a lot to say. A lot of people have had a lot to say. I have been following the Facebook, y'all. It has been wild. But just given the fact that they have really been in a bubble. And it's interesting to hear what has been going on in their little bubble. And it's not the same as what's been going on out here. And so I appreciated hearing their perspective, and I love that. So y'all, Karen Reed is finally done with. It's over. She's not guilty. And now what? Now what is next for Karen Reed? Look forward to the movie, because I'm sure that will be the next thing. And we got more trials to talk about, y'all. So look forward to the next videos. I promise there will be more videos. So we have a lot more trials to talk about, more crime coming up. So you will not be let down. Thank you so much for watching. I will see y'all in the next video. Like, subscribe, and share. See you later.